Have you ever looked at someone you genuinely respected, someone whose intelligence you trusted, whose judgment you had seen proven reliable across enough different situations to stop questioning it, whose capacity for seeing clearly what others consistently missed had earned, over years of observation, something closer to genuine confidence than to the social courtesy of assumed competence, and noticed something unexpected in them? Not a failure, not a deterioration, not the arrival of some difficulty that had finally exceeded their capacity to navigate it. Something that looked, from the outside and through the frame of the values that the surrounding culture provides for making sense of such things, like withdrawal, like stepping back, like the deliberate reduction of engagement with precisely the arenas where their intelligence and their judgment would have been most visible, most rewarded, and most capable of generating the forms of recognition and influence that the world consistently offers to people with exactly their combination of capacities. And have you noticed, in watching this stepping back, that it did not look like defeat? That it did not carry the particular quality of someone who has been overcome by something larger than they were? That it had, on the contrary, a quality of deliberateness that was unmistakable once you looked at it clearly? The quality of a choice made from a position of sufficient clarity about what was being chosen and what was being declined to make the choosing genuinely voluntary rather than simply the least bad of available options. The quality, in other words, of wisdom, of the specific form of wisdom that knows what it does not want and values the knowing of that enough to act on it, at the cost of the forms of recognition and engagement and visibility that the surrounding world is offering and that most people in the position these individuals occupy would not even seriously consider declining. If that observation is familiar to you, if you have watched someone whose intelligence you respected step back in ways that confused the people around them, and that you yourself could not quite explain through the ordinary categories available for making sense of such choices, you have witnessed something that Yuval Noah Harari regards as one of the most significant and most consistently misunderstood phenomena of the present moment. Not a social symptom of burnout or alienation or the various forms of disillusionment that contemporary life regularly produces in people who engage with it intensely enough for long enough. Something more deliberate, more grounded, more philosophically significant than any of those explanations suggest. The stepping back of the wisest minds from the forms of engagement that the contemporary world most consistently rewards and most consistently demands, toward the conditions that genuine wisdom, in the actual circumstances of the actual present moment, most genuinely requires. Harari has approached this phenomenon not as a social curiosity or a biographical pattern worthy of documentation for its own sake, but as a mirror, a highly reflective surface that, properly examined, reveals something essential about the nature of the world that the wisest minds are stepping back from. Something essential about what that world is actually doing to the people most fully engaged with it. Something essential about what genuine intelligence in the specific conditions of the present moment actually requires. And something essential about why the stepping back that looks through the frame of the contemporary world's values, like withdrawal and reduction and loss, might be, through a different and more accurate frame, the most genuinely intelligent response available to a genuinely intelligent person living at this genuinely extraordinary and genuinely demanding moment in the history of the species. To understand what Harari reveals requires understanding first what the stepping back is stepping back from. Not in the abstract terms of cultural critique or social analysis, but in the specific, concrete terms of what the contemporary world actually asks of the people most engaged with it. What it asks in the specific sense of what it requires structurally and continuously and with a comprehensiveness that makes the requirement almost invisible as a requirement because it is so thoroughly the medium of ordinary daily existence that the demand it constitutes is simply experienced as the natural character of life rather than as a specific imposition that could in principle be otherwise. The contemporary world asks, first and most fundamentally, for continuous presence, not presence in the contemplative sense of genuine attunement to the actual moment of actual experience, presence in the digital sense, the continuous, reliable, predictably maintained availability to the streams and the platforms and the networks and the professional and social environments that constitute the primary fabric of contemporary life. The presence of the person who can be reached, who responds, who contributes, who participates in the continuous generation of the content and the engagement and the social maintenance that the world's primary arenas of visibility and influence require of those who wish to remain visible and influential within them. This form of presence has a specific quality that distinguishes it from every previous form of presence that human social life has required. It is continuous in a way that previous forms of social presence were not. Previous generations of even the most socially engaged and professionally ambitious human beings had, built into the natural rhythm of daily life, intervals of genuine withdrawal, the hours of sleep, the physical distances between one professional engagement and the next. The natural limits of human communication technology that meant that the person who left the office left, in a meaningful sense, the demands of the office behind them until the next day. These intervals were not merely recreational in the modern sense of leisure as the managed recovery from work in preparation for the next period of work. They were genuinely regenerative in a deeper sense. They provided the specific conditions, the quiet, the distance from the demand for continuous performance, the genuine interior freedom from the social requirement to be presenting a particular self to a particular audience within which the processes of genuine reflection, genuine integration of experience, and genuine development of the understanding that long engagement with difficult questions slowly produces could actually occur. The contemporary world has largely eliminated these intervals, not through any deliberate policy or any conscious intention to prevent the regeneration that they enabled. Through the simple logic of a technological development, the smartphone, the always-on internet connection, the social and professional platforms that operate on the assumption of continuous availability that has made the intervals unnecessary by making continuous connection possible, and has then, through the dynamics of social and professional expectation that continuous connection generates, made continuous connection not merely possible but effectively mandatory for anyone who wishes to maintain the forms of visibility and engagement that the contemporary world defines as participation in the things that matter. The wisest minds are stepping back from this mandatory continuity, from the specific form of presence that the contemporary world requires and that, extended across sufficient time and with sufficient comprehensiveness, produces specific and well-documented effects on the quality of the consciousness that is subjected to it. Effects on the capacity for the kind of sustained, deep, genuinely exploratory attention that genuine understanding requires. Effects on the ability to think slowly and carefully about genuinely difficult questions without the continuous interruption of the demands for immediate response that continuous presence generates. Effects on the fundamental quality of inner life, the rich, multi-layered, genuinely private domain of thought and feeling, and the gradual development of understanding through genuine engagement with genuine experience, that the requirement for continuous external presence consistently colonizes, and eventually, in the most severe cases of full immersion in the contemporary requirement for visibility, effectively displaces. The second thing the contemporary world asks of its most engaged participants is continuous performance. Not performance in the theatrical sense of self-conscious pretense, but performance in the sociological sense of the continuous presentation of a self that is calibrated in its various dimensions of expression and engagement and the management of its public face, for the specific audiences and the specific contexts and the specific requirements of the various arenas of contemporary visibility within which the person is operating. The professional self that is presented in the professional arena, the intellectual self that is presented in the intellectual arena, the social self that is presented across the various social contexts that contemporary life provides, the digital self that is presented across the platforms and the networks that constitute the primary medium of contemporary public existence. These selves are not necessarily false. They are, in many cases, genuinely expressive of real aspects of the person presenting them. But they are curated. They are managed. They are the product of a continuous, largely unconscious process of selecting what to present and what to withhold, what to emphasize and what to minimize, What version of one's actual experience and actual understanding and actual values to make available to which audience in which context that has become so thoroughly normalized as the default mode of contemporary social existence that most people do not experience it as performance at all. They experience it as simply being themselves in the various contexts that their lives present. The problem that the wisest minds perceive with this continuous performance, the problem that constitutes one of the primary motivations for their stepping back, is not the dishonesty of the performance. It is the cost. The specific ongoing cumulative cost that the maintenance of continuous performance extracts from the quality of the inner life that the performance is, at some level, supposed to be expressing. The continuous management of the presented self requires a specific quality of attention, a specific form of cognitive and emotional energy that is not available for other uses while it is being devoted to the management. The person whose primary relationship with their own experience is the relationship of someone who is continuously managing how that experience is presented to others is a person whose primary relationship with their own experience has been displaced by the management, whose genuine inner life has been progressively subordinated to the performed version of it, whose actual values and actual understandings and actual sense of what matters have become progressively harder to access. Not because they have disappeared, but because the attention that would be required to access them genuinely is continuously occupied by the performance that has become the primary medium through which they are supposed to be expressed. The wisest minds stepping back are stepping back from this displacement, from the specific dynamic through which continuous performance progressively displaces the genuine inner life it is supposed to be expressing, not by rejecting the social world or the professional arenas or the forms of genuine contribution that those arenas can enable, but by creating the distance from the performance's continuous demands within which the genuine inner life can reassert itself, can be attended to with the quality of attention that genuine development requires, can develop into something more fully its own, rather than remaining the raw material for a performance calibrated for the audiences of the contemporary world. The third thing the contemporary world asks, and the one that Harari identifies as most significant in its implications for the quality of genuine thought, is continuous certainty. The contemporary information environment, with its news cycles and its social media dynamics and its professional incentive structures and its cultural norms around intellectual credibility and social authority, rewards a specific relationship to knowledge, the relationship of confident possession, of having clear, shareable, well-defined positions on the questions that the information environment circulates as the important questions, of being the kind of person who knows, who can explain, who can provide the clear and actionable and emotionally satisfying answers that the environment's demand for content and the audience's preference for resolution over complexity consistently rewards. The problem with this reward structure, from the perspective of genuine intellectual development, is that the questions most worth thinking about are not the ones that yield to confident possession. They are the ones that resist it. The questions that, the more honestly and the more carefully one engages with them, the more one discovers that the confident positions available in the contemporary marketplace of ideas are not adequate to the actual complexity of what the questions are pointing at, the questions that genuine engagement makes more rather than less uncertain. That reward, not the confidence of possession, but the patience of sustained, honest, open inquiry that is willing to remain in genuine not knowing for as long as it takes for genuine understanding to develop, which is sometimes much longer than the news cycle or the content cycle or the social dynamics of intellectual reputation in the contemporary world are willing to wait. The wisest minds stepping back are stepping back from the demand for continuous certainty, from the pressure to have and to perform clear positions on questions whose genuine complexity, the pressure for clear positions consistently prevents from being adequately engaged. From the specific dynamic through which the reward for intellectual confidence in the contemporary environment progressively distorts the intellectual's relationship with the questions they are supposed to be engaging, by making the performance of confident engagement more rewarding than the genuine uncertainty of actual engagement. They are stepping back into the conditions where the patient, open, genuinely uncertain inquiry that genuine thinking requires can actually occur, without the continuous pressure to produce the confident outputs that the environment rewards rather than the tentative, exploratory, necessarily incomplete outputs that genuine inquiry actually generates. Harari's analysis of what motivates this stepping back connects directly to some of the most fundamental insights of his broader work on the nature of human consciousness, the mechanics of social influence, and the specific character of the challenges that the present moment presents to the individuals navigating it. The connection is this: the forms of engagement that the contemporary world most consistently rewards, continuous presence, continuous performance, continuous confident certainty, are precisely the forms of engagement that are most incompatible with the development of the specific qualities that the present moment most urgently requires. The qualities of genuine depth, of genuine patience with complexity, of genuine honesty about uncertainty, of genuine presence to actual experience rather than to the performance of experience, of genuine understanding, slowly developed through genuine engagement with genuine difficulty, rather than the simulation of understanding that the environment's reward structures have made so much more efficiently available. The stepping back of the wisest minds is, in this analysis, not a retreat from the demands of the present moment. It is a response to them. A recognition that the demands the present moment most visibly makes, the demands for continuous visibility, continuous engagement, continuous confident contribution to the arenas of public discourse that the contemporary world has constructed as the primary site of intellectual and social significance, are not the same as the demands the present moment most genuinely makes, and that the most genuinely appropriate response to the genuine demands of the present moment requires conditions that the visible demands consistently prevent. To develop this analysis fully requires examining what the wisest minds are stepping back toward, not merely what they are declining, but what they are choosing instead. Because the stepping back is not simply a negative, it is a redirection, a movement towards something as much as it is a movement away from something. And what it is moving toward, when examined carefully, reveals something important, not only about the specific choices of the specific individuals making it, but about what the present moment actually requires, and what genuine intelligence in the present moment actually consists of. The first thing the stepping back moves toward is the recovery of genuine attention, the specific quality of attention that the cognitive science literature describes as deep focus, the ability to engage with a single problem or a single question or a single body of material with sustained, undivided, genuinely exploratory concentration over extended periods of time, without the interruption of competing demands for the same attentional resource that continuous presence in the contemporary environment makes not merely possible but effectively inevitable. This quality of attention is not simply a useful cognitive tool, it is, in Harari's framework, the fundamental prerequisite for the development of genuine understanding. Understanding, in any domain that genuinely matters, is not the product of the rapid, efficient processing of large quantities of relevant information. It is the product of the sustained, patient, genuinely engaged encounter with the specific difficulty of the specific questions that the domain presents, conducted over sufficient time and with sufficient concentration for the genuine complexity of the questions to be adequately apprehended and for the genuine insights that the apprehension makes possible to form. This kind of understanding cannot be developed in the conditions of continuous presence and continuous interruption that the contemporary environment provides as the default. It requires a different quality of time. Not more time in the quantitative sense, but time of a different quality. Time that is genuinely protected from the competing demands that would redirect attention from the sustained encounter with difficulty toward the easier and more immediately rewarding engagements that the environment continuously provides as alternatives. Time that is, in a meaningful sense, slow. That does not carry the pressure for immediate output that the contemporary environment's demand for continuous content generation creates. That allows the mind to actually inhabit the questions it is engaging with rather than processing them efficiently enough to produce the outputs that the environment rewards. The wisest minds stepping back are stepping back, in significant part, into the recovery of this quality of time, into the protection of the conditions within which genuine attention can be sustained, into the specific environments, physical, social, and digital, or the significant reduction of the digital, that make the sustained, deep, genuinely exploratory engagement with difficult questions possible in ways that the environment of continuous presence consistently prevents. What this recovery makes possible, in terms of the actual quality of thought it enables, is significantly different from what the environment of continuous presence and continuous performance produces. The thought that develops in conditions of genuine depth has a different character from the thought that is produced under the pressure of the contemporary environment's demands. It is slower. It is more comfortable with uncertainty and with the provisional, the tentative, the genuinely exploratory dimensions of genuine inquiry. It is less certain in the sense of confident possession of clear positions, and more accurate in the sense of genuinely adequate to the complexity of the questions it is engaging with. It produces fewer outputs per unit of time and more genuine understanding per output. It is, by the contemporary environment's metrics, significantly less productive. By any more adequate accounting of what genuine intellectual productivity actually consists of, it is significantly more so. The second thing the stepping back moves toward is the recovery of genuine solitude. Not the solitude of isolation, of the absence of all human connection and all social engagement, but the specific quality of interior experience that becomes available in the intervals between social engagement, when the mind is genuinely alone with its own processing, rather than continuously occupied with the management of its presentation to others. Harari has consistently pointed toward the evidence that the most significant intellectual achievements across the full span of human history have been associated with a consistency that resists dismissal as coincidence, with the cultivation of genuine solitude, not with the maximization of social engagement and professional visibility, not with the continuous presence in the arenas of public intellectual discourse that the contemporary environment defines as the necessary condition of intellectual significance, but with the opposite, with the deliberate protection of intervals of genuine interior freedom from the social demand for performance and presentation, within which the mind can engage with the questions that matter to it on its own terms, at its own pace, without the continuous distortion that the requirement to present what it is thinking to an audience in real time inevitably introduces into the thinking itself. The thinking that occurs in genuine solitude is different from the thinking that occurs in continuous social performance. It is less efficient in the sense that it does not produce the continuous stream of shareable outputs that thinking in continuous social performance generates. But it is more genuine in the sense of actually engaging with the questions as they actually are, rather than as they need to be reformulated to be presentable, shareable, and appropriate to the audience of the moment. The solitary thinker can follow a line of inquiry to conclusions that are not yet ready to be shared, can remain in genuine uncertainty without the pressure to resolve it into a position that can be defended in public, can develop ideas through the slow, exploratory, often circular process through which genuine ideas actually develop, rather than through the more linear and more presentable process that the requirement for public performance imposes on thinking that occurs in its continuous presence. The wisest minds stepping back are recovering this quality of thinking. The thinking that is genuinely their own rather than the thinking that has been calibrated in the process of occurring for the audience that continuous social presence has made continuous. The thinking that is comfortable in its own incompleteness, that can remain in the middle of something for as long as the middle requires without the pressure to produce the definitive that public performance demands. That can be genuinely exploratory rather than confidently positioned because it is not, in the moment of its occurrence, being performed for anyone. The third thing the stepping back moves toward is the recovery of genuine relationship. Not the quantity of social contact that continuous connectivity provides, which the evidence consistently suggests has reached levels that exceed anything the human social architecture evolved to manage, but the quality of genuine mutual knowing that genuine relationship requires, and that the conditions of continuous connectivity and continuous social performance consistently undermine. Harari's evolutionary framework illuminates why this matters. Human beings evolved across hundreds of thousands of years of social life in small, stable groups of people who knew each other across the full span of their shared experience, a specific architecture for social engagement that was calibrated for exactly that context. The context of people who were genuinely known to each other, whose histories and motivations and capabilities and actual inner lives were, to a significant degree, transparent to those around them because the transparency was the product of years of genuine shared experience in a shared physical and social reality. People who could be trusted not because trust had been established through the performance of trustworthiness, but because the actual record of actual behavior across actual shared circumstances over actual extended time provided the only reliable basis for genuine trust. The social environment of the contemporary world is not calibrated for this architecture. It is calibrated for the opposite. For large numbers of brief, surface-level, primarily performative social contexts across the various arenas of digital and professional and social engagement that contemporary life provides. For the continuous maintenance of a large portfolio of what the social network literature calls weak ties, the numerous, superficial, functionally useful connections that the contemporary environment makes possible in quantities that no previous social environment in human history has made possible, at the consistent cost of the fewer, deeper, more demanding, and genuinely sustaining connections that the human social architecture evolved to require. The wisest minds stepping back are stepping back in part into the recovery of the kind of relationship that the contemporary social environment most consistently prevents. The relationship in which genuine mutual knowing is possible because the quantity of social engagement has been reduced sufficiently to make the quality of it the primary concern. The relationship that is genuinely demanding and genuinely uncomfortable and genuinely revealing in the ways that genuine intimacy requires, rather than the comfortable, low-demand, easily maintained connections that contemporary social technology makes possible in unlimited quantity, but that provide, for all their comfort and all their number, something fundamentally less than what genuine human relationship at its most functional actually consists of. The fourth thing the stepping back moves toward is the recovery of genuine values. The values that emerge from the honest, uncoerced, genuinely personal encounter with the questions of what matters and why, and what a life genuinely organized around what actually matters would actually consist of, as distinguished from the values that the contemporary environment produces efficiently through its various mechanisms of social influence, cultural normalization, and the pervasive, continuous, effectively invisible alignment of individual desires and preferences and sense of what matters with the values that serve the continued functioning of the systems that those mechanisms are embedded within. Harari's analysis of how the contemporary environment shapes values is among the most important and most consistently underappreciated dimensions of his broader work. The claim is not the crude one that the contemporary environment produces uniformly false or bad values in the people it shapes. The claim is more subtle and more difficult. It is that the process through which values are formed in the contemporary environment, the process of continuous exposure to algorithmically curated information environments, continuous social comparison with the curated presentations of others' lives and values, continuous professional and social incentive structures that reward specific forms of behavior and penalize others, is a process that is not organized around the genuine inquiry into what actually matters that the genuine development of genuine values requires. It is organized around the efficient production of the desires, preferences, and values that serve the continued functioning of the systems doing the organizing. And the values that this process produces are therefore not genuinely the individual's own, in the deepest sense of genuinely emerging from their own genuine encounter with the genuine questions that the genuine circumstances of their genuine life are actually raising. The wisest minds stepping back are stepping back into the conditions within which genuine values, in this deeper sense, can actually be developed and can actually be heard by the person doing the developing, above the continuous noise of the environment's production of the alternative values it requires them to hold. The stepping back creates the distance from the environment's value production machinery within which the individual's own genuine encounter with the genuine questions of what matters can actually occur, and within which the genuine values that genuine encounter produces can become available as the actual basis for actual choices rather than as the aspirational additions to a life primarily organized around the values that the environment has efficiently installed through the process of continuous exposure that the stepping back is stepping back from. The fifth thing the stepping back moves toward, and the one that Harari identifies as most fundamental to the specific character of the wisest mind's withdrawal in the present moment, is the recovery of what he calls genuine clarity, the specific quality of perception unobstructed by the continuous noise of the contemporary information environment that allows genuine understanding of the actual character of the actual situation one is actually in, the clarity that is the prerequisite for every form of genuine judgment, every form of genuine wisdom, every form of genuine contribution to the collective project of navigating the present moment that goes beyond the performance of navigation towards something that is actually navigating. This clarity is not simply a matter of having better information. It is a matter of having a different relationship with information. The relationship of someone who has developed sufficient distance from the continuous stream of information to be able to evaluate it rather than simply to be moved by it. Sufficient distance from the emotional dynamics that the information environment is calibrated to produce to be able to assess the actual significance of the things being presented as significant. Sufficient distance from the social and professional pressures that shape what people say and think and believe within the contemporary information environment to be able to arrive at their own genuine assessment of what is actually true and what is actually important and what actually deserves the quality of sustained, serious, genuinely exploratory attention that the present moment's genuine challenges require. The clarity that the stepping back recovers is the clarity of the mind that has created sufficient space between itself and the environment's continuous demands to actually see the environment rather than simply to be inside it, to perceive the system rather than simply to be processed by it, to understand with the specific quality of understanding that genuine distance enables what is actually happening as distinct from what the system's various mechanisms for representing what is happening are producing as the apparent content of the continuous stream of information and event and opinion and interpretation that constitutes the medium within which most people most of the time exist as engaged participants rather than as genuine observers. This is what Harari means when he says that the wisest minds are stepping back. Not stepping back in the sense of declining engagement with the genuine challenges and the genuine questions of the present moment. Stepping back in the sense of declining the specific form of engagement that the contemporary environment has normalized as the only available form, in the direction of the specific conditions within which genuine engagement, as distinguished from the performance of engagement, becomes possible. The question of what precipitates this stepping back, what specifically motivates the individuals who undertake it, in the face of all the costs it entails in terms of visibility and professional standing and the social recognition that continuous engagement provides, is one that Harari's analysis addresses with considerable specificity. The precipitating factor is not, in most cases, a single dramatic event or a single philosophical insight that arrives complete and immediately compelling. It is the accumulation of a specific quality of evidence. The evidence that something fundamental is not working, that the continuous engagement at the level of efficiency it requires is producing a quality of thought and a quality of life and a quality of genuine understanding that is systematically less than what the person knows, from whatever glimpses of genuine depth they have managed to access within the conditions of the continuous engagement, is possible. This evidence accumulates differently in different people. In some, it accumulates as exhaustion. The specific, deep, not recovery period resolvable exhaustion of a mind that has been continuously engaged at high efficiency in the forms of presence and performance and output generation that the contemporary environment requires, for long enough that the depletion of the specific cognitive and emotional resources that genuine thought and genuine presence require has become impossible to ignore. In others, it accumulates as a growing dissatisfaction with the quality of one's own thinking. The recognition that the thoughts one is producing, the positions one is taking, the contributions one is making to the arenas of discourse one is participating in have a quality that is somewhat below what one knows one is capable of. That they are, in some way, that resists precise articulation but is entirely unmistakable in its felt quality. More performance than genuine understanding. More efficient production of the outputs the environment rewards than genuine engagement with the questions the outputs are supposed to be addressing. In others, it accumulates as the specific discomfort of increasingly frequent moments of perception. Brief intervals of genuine clarity, often emerging in the specific conditions that continuous engagement accidentally creates in the gaps between its demands, in which the actual character of what one is doing and the actual distance between what one is doing and what genuine engagement with the questions that matter would consist of, become visible in ways that the continuous engagement had been preventing from becoming visible. These moments are, when they first arrive, typically brief and typically quickly absorbed back into the continuous demand for performance that prevents them from developing into something more sustained or more consequential. But they accumulate. And in accumulating, they constitute the specific quality of evidence that eventually, in the wisest and the most honest of the minds that experience them, becomes sufficient to motivate the stepping back. The process of the stepping back itself, once the motivation for it has become sufficient to actually motivate it rather than simply to produce the discomfort that the continuous engagement prevents from developing into actual change, follows a pattern that Harari's analysis illuminates with particular clarity. It is almost never dramatic. It is almost never announced or performed for an audience. It is almost never experienced by the people undergoing it as a definitive departure or a final conclusion. It is experienced, rather, as a series of small adjustments. A gradually increasing willingness to decline the invitations that continuous engagement generates. A gradually increasing protection of the intervals between engagements. A gradually increasing tolerance for the specific discomfort that the reduction of continuous engagement produces in someone who has been, for long enough, organized around the demands of continuous engagement that the reduction initially feels like loss rather than like recovery. The discomfort of the stepping back is genuine and deserves to be acknowledged clearly. It is not simply the discomfort of fewer notifications or the social awkwardness of declining invitations or the professional anxiety of reduced visibility in the arenas where visibility matters for professional standing. It is the deeper discomfort of the identity adjustment that the stepping back requires. The adjustment from the identity organized around continuous engagement and continuous performance and the specific forms of recognition that continuous visibility provides, to the different and initially less fully formed identity that the stepping back is moving toward. The identity of the person who is choosing depth over efficiency, quality over quantity, genuine understanding over the performance of understanding, and the long arc of genuine intellectual and personal development over the short and continuous reward of the contemporary environment's recognition of productive engagement. This identity adjustment takes time. It is not fully achieved at the moment of the stepping back's initiation. It develops gradually as the conditions that the stepping back creates begin to produce their effects, as the quality of thought that genuine depth makes possible becomes available in ways it was not available under the conditions of continuous engagement, as the genuine clarity that sufficient distance from the noise of the information environment provides begins to produce genuine understandings that the continuous engagement was preventing. As the genuine relationship with one's own actual experience, attended to with the quality of genuine attention that the stepping back makes available, begins to provide the specific kind of evidence about what actually matters and what one's actual values actually are that the performance of values within the continuous engagement had been substituting for. Harari has described his own version of this process with a directness and a personal honesty that is unusual for someone of his public prominence and intellectual reputation. He has described the way that his sustained practice of meditation, which he undertakes with a regularity and a seriousness that distinguishes it from the more performative relationship with contemplative practice that the contemporary wellness culture has normalized, is the primary mechanism through which he maintains the specific quality of distance from the continuous demands of his own engagement with the world that allows him to perceive those demands clearly rather than simply to be organized by them. The way that the quality of thought that his public work produces, the historical and philosophical and analytical insights that have made his books and his lectures and his public contributions genuinely distinctive, is not produced in the conditions of continuous engagement with the demands of public intellectual life, but in the conditions of genuine withdrawal from those demands that the sustained contemplative practice creates and maintains. This is not incidental to Harari's work. It is fundamental to it. The specific quality of seeing that distinguishes his best thinking from the more ordinary outputs of even very intelligent continuous engagement with the questions he addresses is the quality of seeing that the distance his practice provides makes possible, the ability to perceive the system clearly rather than from within it. To evaluate the stories that organize contemporary life from a vantage point that is genuinely outside them rather than embedded within their organizing force. To ask the genuinely difficult questions that the continuous engagement with the contemporary world prevents from being clearly asked because the asking of them, taken seriously, would require changes that the continuous engagement makes practically impossible. The question of what the stepping back ultimately produces, what it enables in terms of the genuine contributions that the wisest minds who undertake it are then in a position to make to the collective navigation of the present moment, is the question that Harari's analysis most importantly illuminates, because the stepping back is not its own justification. It is not valuable simply as a form of personal well-being or personal development or the recovery of the qualities of inner life that continuous engagement has depleted. It is valuable in the larger frame that Harari's historical perspective provides, because of what it makes possible in the way of genuine contribution to the civilizational challenges that the present moment is generating and that the continuous engagement of even the most genuinely intelligent minds is not by itself adequate to address. The civilizational challenges of the present moment, the challenges of navigating the development and the deployment of artificial intelligence in ways that serve human flourishing rather than human subjugation, of developing governance frameworks adequate to the concentration of power that the most advanced technologies are enabling, of maintaining the social and epistemic conditions within which democratic self-governance remains possible, of preserving the forms of genuine human community and genuine human meaning that the various pressures of the present moment are systematically eroding. These challenges are not being adequately addressed by the continuous engagement of the people who are most visibly engaged with them. This is not a criticism of those people's intelligence or commitment. It is a structural observation. The continuous engagement, conducted in the conditions that the contemporary environment requires it to be conducted in, produces a specific quality of response to these challenges that is systematically less than adequate to their actual character. It produces responses that are calibrated for the contemporary environment's demand for clear positions and confident certainty and shareable insights, rather than responses that are calibrated for the actual complexity and the actual difficulty and the actual novelty of the challenges themselves. It produces responses that are better at generating engagement and recognition within the arenas of contemporary public discourse than at actually advancing the genuine understanding that the challenges require. The wisest minds who have stepped back are, in stepping back, recovering the conditions within which the different quality of response that these challenges actually require can actually be developed. The slower, deeper, more genuinely uncertain, more honestly exploratory quality of engagement, with the genuine difficulty of genuinely difficult questions that the conditions of continuous engagement systematically prevent. Not because they have become less engaged with the challenges, but because their engagement has become more genuinely adequate to them, more honest about their actual complexity, more comfortable with the genuine uncertainty that honest engagement with them produces, more resistant to the demand for premature clarity that the contemporary environment's preference for confident positions over genuine understanding consistently generates. What this means for the rest of us, for the people who are not among the wisest minds stepping back, but who are watching the stepping back occur, and who may be, in their own ways and in their own circumstances, feeling the specific quality of discomfort that constitutes the beginning of the movement toward the stepping back that the present moment most genuinely requires, is something that Harari articulates with the particular combination of clarity and honesty that distinguishes his best work. It means, first, that the interpretation of the stepping back as withdrawal, as reduction, as the loss of engagement and contribution, is not the accurate interpretation. It is the interpretation that the system generates, automatically and inevitably, for the movement that constitutes its most genuine threat. The system cannot interpret the stepping back accurately because the accurate interpretation of it is an interpretation that reveals the system's own inadequacy as the arena of genuine engagement that it presents itself as being. The accurate interpretation is the one that the system cannot produce and that can only be arrived at from the vantage point of sufficient distance from the system's organizing force to perceive it clearly. It means, second, that the discomfort of the potential stepping back, the specific anxiety and the specific sense of loss and the specific social and professional costs that the contemplation of reducing continuous engagement generates is not evidence against the stepping back. It is evidence of how thoroughly the identity organized around continuous engagement has become the primary identity. The discomfort is the measure of the identification, not the measure of the actual cost. The actual cost, extended across the timescale on which its genuine effects become accessible, is consistently less than the discomfort of its anticipation suggests. And the genuine gains, in the quality of thought and the quality of inner life and the quality of genuine contribution that the stepping back makes possible, are consistently more than the anticipatory imagination, still organized around the values of the continuous engagement, is able to perceive. It means, third, that the stepping back is not available only to the wisest minds. It is available in various forms and to various degrees and at various scales to any person who has developed sufficient awareness of the specific costs that continuous engagement extracts and sufficient clarity about the specific conditions that genuine thought and genuine presence and genuine relationship and genuine values require to make the specific adjustments to the structure and the commitments of their daily life that the stepping back, in whatever form it takes in the specific circumstances of their specific life, actually requires. This is not a prescription. Harari is not prescribing stepping back for everyone. He is revealing what the stepping back that is occurring in the wisest minds around him reveals about the nature of the present moment and the specific demands that the present moment makes on the quality of consciousness that navigates it. What it reveals about the relationship between the forms of engagement that the contemporary world most consistently rewards and the forms of inner development that the present moment most genuinely requires. And what it reveals about the specific conditions of depth and solitude and genuine relationship and genuine values and genuine clarity that any person who wishes to respond to the present moment with the full quality of their actual intelligence, rather than with the performed version of intelligence that the continuous engagement produces, will need to find ways to protect and to cultivate. The wisest minds are stepping back, not from the world, from a specific way of being in the world that is preventing them from being genuinely in it, not from the challenges of the present moment, from the specific form of engagement with those challenges that is preventing genuine engagement with them, not from other people, from the specific quality of continuous social performance that is preventing genuine encounter with them. They are stepping back toward something, toward the conditions that genuine thought requires, toward the quality of genuine attention that genuine understanding demands, toward the depth of genuine relationship that genuine human connection consists of, toward the honesty of genuine values that genuine self-knowledge produces, toward the clarity of genuine perception that sufficient distance from the noise of the continuous stream makes available. And in stepping back toward all of this, they are doing something that looks, through the frame of the contemporary world's values, like a loss. But that is, through the more accurate frame that Harari's historical and philosophical perspective provides, the most genuinely intelligent response available to a genuinely intelligent person living through the most genuinely demanding and genuinely consequential moment in the history of the species. The stepping back is not the conclusion, it is the beginning. The beginning of the specific quality of engagement with the actual challenges of the actual present moment that the conditions of the continuous engagement have been preventing. The beginning of the contribution that genuine depth and genuine clarity and genuine wisdom slowly and with difficulty and at genuine personal cost developed in the conditions that the stepping back creates is actually capable of making to a moment that nothing less than genuine depth and genuine clarity and genuine wisdom is actually adequate to address. We are at the most important juncture in human history. The challenges we face require the best of what human intelligence is capable of producing, and the wisest minds, the ones who understand most clearly what the best of human intelligence requires in order to produce its best, are stepping back from the conditions that prevent it, not away from the challenges, toward the genuine capacity to actually meet them. That movement is the most important intellectual and personal movement of the present moment, and its quiet, unannounced, persistently misinterpreted occurrence in the lives of the wisest people around us is, Harari reveals, not a symptom of the present moment's difficulty. It is the most genuinely hopeful sign available within it.